Hello, anyone out there in the ether? Okay, so I've given up with Zoom again. It's still not playing my game, so I can't go through slides, but I've got the slides all ready for you, so they will go in the group, and then you can have a look at the slides and add notes to it if you want. So day 2, yesterday we talked about the importance of gut health, so I'm hoping that you realize just how important taking care of your gut and your digestion is for hormone health. And Lisa, I saw your comment about you went out and bought some of that beautiful red cabbage sauerkraut. Well done. So please, the rest of you, let me know what was your takeaway from yesterday's live. What are you going to do that's actually going to support your gut health? If you're really stuck and not sure, reach out, let me know, and maybe I can help give you some support. So day 2, we're going to talk about liver health. Now again, liver health along with gut health is important regardless of whether you're perimenopause, you're in that kind of menopause window, or you are post-menopause. Liver health is really important. It's important for everybody. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. Hopefully I won't be an hour today. And there is a little recipe for you that I'll talk about as well. So the liver is really important. It is on just under your kind of rib cage. You shouldn't be able to feel it. It's a massive, great organ that kind of goes all the way across, right, almost to the back. And the gallbladder is attached to the liver. The gallbladder is also really, really important. They're incredibly important for healthy digestion. They're important for that gut microbiome balance as well, particularly the gallbladder, because it secretes bacteria that are really beneficial. But some of the reasons why the liver is so important is that it makes proteins, it digests fructose, which is really important. Fructose is a fruit sugar, and it's usually when we have any kind of sugar or glucose, we're digesting it in our gut, our intestines, and it absorbs into the blood, and then it's dealt with. The liver actually metabolizes, breaks down, digests fructose, and it can cope with so much because we get fructose from fruit. The problem is when we are having lots of refined carbohydrates with fructose syrup added, that puts an extra burden on the liver. Lots of lollies, fizzy drinks, all of those will have fructose syrup. That puts a huge amount of pressure on our liver. Also, some dried fruit, if you think about a box of raisins, if you had a bunch of grapes, you wouldn't eat the whole bunch of grapes. You'd have a few. The fibre, the skins, that all kind of means that we get full a lot quicker and we don't eat the whole bunch of grapes. If you're having a box of raisins, you're effectively eating a whole bunch of grapes, but the sugar's been concentrated, and that's it becomes like a really concentrated form of fructose. So you do want to be a bit careful with dried fruit, that you don't overconsume, because it's all concentrated and it's smaller. You can easily munch your way through it, but you still got to be careful that you don't have too much. So the liver knows how to do this. The liver's quite capable of doing it. It's when we overload it with fructose, and then the liver's like, whoa, okay, I'm not used to this much, that we can have problems. So be careful with the fizzy drinks and the lollies and the dried fruits. So I'm not saying don't ever do that, but just don't have it all the time. The liver also regulates glucose in that it regulates our storage form of glucose. So when we have glucose, whether that's usually in form of some kind of carbohydrate, including fruit and veg, which is the good forms of glucose, then if we don't burn it off, it gets stored. Some of it will get stored in our muscles for when we're burning it off when we're moving, and most of it will then get stored in the liver. And it's turned into something called glycogen. And it's almost like the liver is the storage cupboard for our glucose, which we need for energy. Again, if we eat too much, then the liver obviously stores the excess. And then over time, it's like the cupboards are full, and the liver can't function as well as it normally would. And eventually you can get something called fatty liver. So I'm not going to talk about that too much, but just know that you do have to be careful that you're not overdoing the kind of the crappy carbs, because it will put pressure on the liver. And actually the crappy carbs are worse for the liver than fat to some extent. You have to be really careful. The liver is also important for destroying old red blood cells, and it produces some hormones as well. it's really important. One of its biggest functions, and it has quite a few, but one of its biggest functions is, well, it makes bile, which is really, really important because that actually is a natural laxative. It gets rid of all the crap we don't need anymore. It helps with the along with the absorption of fats. But one of the biggest roles of the liver is also detoxification, and it specifically detoxifies estrogen, which we obviously know is really, really important. So its main job, it's not the only detoxification organ. Our kidneys detoxify, our lungs detoxify. So it's all about taking in something and then getting rid of what we no longer want, getting rid of our waste. So when we poo, we're getting rid of waste. When we wee, we're getting rid of waste. When we breathe out, we're getting rid of waste. When we sweat, we're getting rid of waste. So our skin, our lungs, our liver, our kidney, and our gut itself are all detoxification organs. The liver gets a lot of attention. And it's a process that goes on every minute of every day. And one of my things that really irritates me is when you hear about detox. Now, at the end of November, I'm going to do a detox with you. It's actually, I consider it more of a reset. So we're going to do a little fast, and we're going to just look at detoxifying our houses, our minds, as well as what we eat. But I hate the term detoxification. People know what it means. When you say you're going to do a detox, people get what that means. But it's actually bollocks, because we're detoxing every minute of every day. You don't just detox once a month or detox in the spring. You're actually detoxing all the time. So it's a silly term because it isn't really true. A proper detoxification is if you're coming off of drugs and you need to clear those drugs out of your system, and then you need to be in a proper facility where they can monitor you, because you can die from a real proper medical detoxification. So that's when we talk about doing a detox. That's really what a detox is. The liver is detoxifying all the time, and that's really a transformation process. It's taking a substance that could be harmful, and it's transforming it into something that is less harmful, so it can be safely removed from the body. And we completely influence how well the liver does its job. We can either support it or we can hinder it. Now, sometimes medications that you might take, they're actually using the liver detoxification process to make it active. So you're taking a medication that's inactive, it goes to the liver, and the liver then transforms it to an active form. And so that's something that's really important. Estrogen gets broken down, and actually in the process of that transformation, the type of estrogen that's broken down and gets recycled is actually not necessarily the best form of estrogen. So we need to support our liver as best we can. So I want to talk a little bit about what happens in the liver. I'm not going to bore you too much, I hope. But I want you to think of the liver, it's almost as though it's got two doors. It's got a blue door and a red door, because there's two stages to detoxification. There is more, but let's say there's two. Phase one, let's say that's the blue door, and phase two is the red door. Now, both stages of detoxification or transformation, which is a better term, we need specific nutrients. And so what we eat can really influence how efficient our liver is. So if we think about in phase one, this is our blue door. So our blue door, whether it's this happens with herbs and food, it happens with our medication, alcohol, smoking, estrogen, cholesterol, everything will go to the liver to be transformed. So in phase one, whatever that substance is gets broken down. And sometimes what they're actually doing is, like I think I mentioned it yesterday, you've got Mr. Potato Head. So Mr. Potato Head, if you remember that from when you were a kid, looks like a potato, and you take a hat off. It's got the arms you could take off, you can take its legs off, you can put a belt on, so you just got the potato, and then you kind of add all the bits to it. So in phase one, here comes Mr. Potato Head and Mrs. Potato Head, and phase one is where you're basically taking off the arms and the legs and the hat and the belt. So you're just going to have a potato. So that potato in some instances can become more toxic once you've removed all these things off. Or, as I said, medications now have become activated. So some medications, if you are deficient in zinc, and also there is a constituent in grapefruit called naringenin, they can inhibit, they can stop, they can interfere with that phase. So that's why sometimes if you're put on medication, you're told to not have grapefruit or drink grapefruit juice, because it actually affects that phase 1. So things that are really important, nutrients that are really important to support your liver in phase 1 would be your B vitamins. So yes, you could take a B vitamin supplement, but things like grains and meat and vegetables, brilliant forms of B vitamins. It's one of the reasons why I hate it when people say, oh, I don't have grains because of the anti-nutrients, because you're actually missing out on some really good Bs that you find in grains. So meat, grains and veggies are really good forms of your Bs. Folic acid is also known as B9, and we largely get that from our foliage, our green veggies. Really, really important in that first phase. There is something called glutathione, which we make in our bodies, and that is an antioxidant. It helps to stop that kind of rust that goes on, because there's lots of oxidation happening in the liver, which is natural, it's meant to happen, and the food that we can eat can actually balance that out. So we need things like glutathione, which, as I said, our body makes, but it needs nutrients in order to make it. So things like vitamin C is really important, vitamin E is really important, selenium is very important, zinc is very important. There's a beautiful herb called milk thistle, which you can get as a supplement, you can get as in a tea. All really important for phase 1 to make sure that phase 1 works properly and Mr. Potato Head just becomes a potato. Then we move into what's known as phase 2. And so this is when Mr. Potato Head has things added to it to make Mr. Potato Head safe. So you've got your potato, hats, legs, arms, belt are all put on, different things are put on. Mr. Potato Head is now safe, and now we can get rid of it in our body. We can put it out. So it's basically to make it water soluble. So this is when protein is really important. We need specific amino acids, which are the protein is like a pearl necklace, and each single pearl is an amino acid that makes up the protein. We need those amino acids for our liver to function well. So eating enough protein is really important. And actually, in each phase, perimenopause protein is really important. Menopause is very important. Postmenopause is even more important. When we're kind of in that postmenopause stage, we don't necessarily absorb protein as well as we did when we were younger. So it's really important that we make sure we're eating more than enough protein. So we need to kind of up our protein as we age. We need something that's got plants that have got sulfur in, because sulfur is added to Mr. Potato Head. And so things like garlic is really important, onion is really important, eggs, Brussels sprouts, one of my favourite vegetables. Oh, if you don't eat Brussels sprouts, eat Brussels sprouts. Onions, spring onions. There's an amazing constituent called sulforaphane. You can get this in supplemental form. I love sulforaphane. It's one of my favourite supplements. But you get that from broccoli sprouts. So you can actually buy powdered broccoli sprouts, you can buy frozen broccoli sprouts, and you can add that to smoothies and drinks and all sorts of soups and all sorts of stuff. So sulforaphane is really, really important, again, for this part of this transformation, this detoxification in the liver. So that's what's really important, your proteins and those sulfurated plant products. So lots of different nutrients are really important. These aren't the only ones, but basically we're looking at, you know, your B vitamins, protein, your plants that have got your antioxidants in, your fruit, your vegetables, your grains, a little bit of meat. Healthy food is what you actually need. Now, in between the red door, the blue door, we've kind of got a waiting room, and this is when a lot of the transformation has taken place, and Mr. Potato Head is kind of waiting. He's had his hat and his legs and his arms removed, and then he's kind of waiting to go into the next room to have bits put back on. And it's really important because it's at this point where estrogen and cholesterol can get recycled when it hasn't gone through that second transformation process. So it's kind of in the waiting room. And if you drink a lot of alcohol, specifically, alcohol will always get detoxified at the expense of estrogen and cholesterol, because the body thinks alcohol is a poison. Estrogen and cholesterol we tend to make, and so the body will prioritize that which comes from outside of itself. So it will prioritize alcohol at the expense of estrogen and cholesterol. So what can happen with something like estrogen is estrogen has been transformed, and it's in the waiting room, and the metabolite, we call it, the bit that's been transformed, can then get recycled back into your system. And that recycled metabolite of estrogen is actually not always the great type of estrogen. It's usually that type of estrogen that can create those kind of estrogen dominant cancers and a lot of the symptoms that we get in menopause, and also some other reproductive health conditions. So we don't want that. We want to make sure that any excess estrogen we don't need is got rid of and it's cleared from our body. We do not want that to be recycled. So this is when what we eat is really important. So again, this is when a lot of oxidation occurs. So we need our vitamin C and A and E and selenium. We need our zinc and our manganese. There's something called coenzyme 10, really important in this phase. We make it. You can get it from foods. You can also get it in supplemental forms. If any of you are on statins for having high cholesterol, you do need CoQ10, because the CoQ10 production is actually inhibited when you take statins. Again, those sulfur-containing foods, the eggs, the onions, the garlic, those broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, all sulforaphane. There are things called the bioflavonoids that we get. Milk thistle contains a constituent called silymarin, which is really important. There is something called pycnogenol, which is also something I think you get from pine. Which in a lot of liver supplements you'll find that's a constituent that's also added, because it can help with this kind of the oxidation process. Turmeric, I'm not a massive fan of turmeric in the supplemental form. I actually don't think it does the liver any favours, but if you're having turmeric as a food, if you can use turmeric as a spice, if you can get the actual turmeric root and grate it and put it in your food, or add that to milk and make a golden milk, that I love. But I really don't like turmeric supplements. I'm not convinced that they're great, because they're a really high concentration and our body's not used to absorbing that amount in the supplemental form, and there's some research coming out that it can actually damage the liver. So if turmeric as a food, but I wouldn't have it as a supplement personally. You can use something called NAC, N-acetylcysteine, have that in supplemental form. I use it a lot for respiratory and cold conditions. That's sometimes found in supplemental form for liver support as well. My favourite is just get as much plants in your diet, just like I said yesterday, because then you'll get all your vitamins and your minerals, your nuts and your seeds and your healthy grains, herbs and spices, fruit and veg, little bit of meat on the side. If you eat meat, you'll have everything that you need. The biggest thing I would say is probably to look for herbs. I think herbs are fantastic to support the liver. So the biggest thing also is really removing those liver burdens. So that is your fructose. You know, keep away from anything with fructose syrup in it. So look for labels. I'm not saying don't ever have Coca-Cola. I'm not saying don't ever have lollies, but they are like absolute treat foods. They're not everyday foods, because that can put pressure on your liver. So be really careful with anything with a huge amount of fructose. Please don't not eat fruit just because fructose is in fruit. That's what we're meant to eat. Our bodies are designed to get fructose from fruit. It's the refined crap that we've made. That's what creates the problems for our liver, not fruit. So I see it sometimes, oh yeah, keep away from fruit, it's really high sugar. It drives me nuts. It's like, it's the universe's lolly is an apple or a nectarine. It's sweet, it's meant to be sweet. That's good for us. It's just that we eat other stuff that's not so good. So don't be frightened of fruit. Just keep away, reduce the other crap that's got fructose in it, and you know what I mean. Be really careful with a hugely high intake of carbohydrate, particularly the refined processed carbohydrates. So, you know, grains are brilliant, fruit and veg is brilliant. It's really the cakes and the slices and the chippies and the biscuits. we know this is the stuff that we need to be really careful of. So if you were going on a low carb diet, which I actually like, but I don't like low carb diets that say, oh, therefore you should cut down on your fruit and your veg, and you can't have carrot because carrot is really got a lot of glucose in. That drives me nuts because it's fruit and veg, for God's sake. If you're on a low carb diet, it's the biscuits and the cakes and the crap that we should be reducing. And I certainly don't say don't have that, because life is too short to not have donuts and custard tarts, but you don't want to be having it every day. Trans fats. So trans fats are usually found in baked goods now, so you can have a look at hydrogenated trans fats. We know that they are not the good form of fats. They are the ones that our bodies don't recognise, and they are the ones that are really linked to heart disease and stroke and cardiovascular problems. So be careful. I don't stress about butter. I think butter is perfectly fine. We just don't need to eat buckets of it, but a little bit of butter is okay. So most, you get a bit of trans fats from animals, but most trans fats come from, again, those kind of baked processed goods. One of the things that I think you do need to be careful of, and I haven't really talked about it a huge amount in the group, but it's about those chemicals that are around us that mimic estrogen. So our liver breaks those down and detoxifies those, and we can't get away from it. You cannot put yourself in a bubble and get away from it. There are so many millions of tons of chemicals pumped out into our environment that it's kind of scary, and we don't actually know what happens when half of them mix and mingle. So when they say, oh, well, a little bit of this is okay, it's safe, what you don't know is what happens when that then interacts with another chemical. But there are a huge amount of chemicals and plastics in our environment that absolutely affect our thyroid, our estrogen, progesterone and testosterone, and we do need to be careful of those. And the best way we can be careful of those is to support our liver, because our liver can break them down and get rid of them, but we've just got to give the liver what it needs in order to do it. So things like medications, be careful with those. Be careful with some of the contraception that gets in our environment. Perfumes in particular, be really careful with perfumes. They contain chemicals that definitely can mimic estrogen. We've got pollutants, pesticides, BPA free. You probably all heard about BPA. Well, there's also a BPF and a BPS. And so even if something's BPA free, if it's plastic, it might very well have another type of bisphenol in that can actually mimic estrogen and cause problems. The receipts, if you get like FPOS receipts, that's actually covered in something that is also estrogen mimicking. So I try very hard to say I don't want the receipt unless I absolutely need to do that. So just be careful when you're touching receipts, because you're getting it on your fingers. Wash your hands when you get home if you're touching a receipt. Don't touch a receipt and then put your fingers in your mouth, because then you're ingesting something that mimics estrogen. So be careful as much as you can. I might do another talk on this at another time, because it's a really big deal and there's lots that you can do to kind of minimize our exposure, but supporting the liver is one of the best ways you can do that. Coffee, to some extent, can be a liver burden. As someone that loves coffee, I'm never going to say don't drink coffee, but if you feel that your liver does need a little bit of support, be careful with how much. I could do a whole talk just on coffee, because it can certainly benefit some. For some people, it's of no benefit whatsoever, and it's really about where you sit. So maybe I'll talk about coffee another time, the good and the bad, and how you know what's right for you, because it really is personal, and everyone depends on their genetics as to whether they can or can't cope with coffee. But I've had a client who had 10 plus coffees, which was not awesome regardless of his genetics. So there's an amount. So if you're having horrendous symptoms, particularly if you're perimenopause, it might be worth reducing your coffee or removing it and just having a look to see if that makes a really big difference. If you're having anxiety and panic attacks, might be worth looking at your coffee. Might not be that, but it's worth playing around and seeing if it is too much coffee. Coffee can bring on hot flushes for some women. So again, it becomes a choice. Do you have the coffee or not? Do you put up with the hot flushes or not? Alcohol, as I said before, alcohol is probably one of the biggest things that we can do. as I've got older, I'm drinking less and less alcohol because I love gin and tonic. I will always love gin and tonic, but I really only have it now and again because I just find it doesn't do me any favors. I don't sleep. It makes me have night sweats. So I'll have it now and again, and it's a choice. But as much as possible, if you can have alcohol at the weekends, have it as a treat. Don't have it as an everyday beverage. Please don't use alcohol to manage your stress. I've been there, I've done that. It doesn't work, and it will make you unwell. And you can put weight on just from drinking alcohol. I found when I gave up alcohol, I didn't give it up, that's not true. When I reduced my alcohol consumption quite substantially, I lost heaps of weight just doing that alone. So definitely, again, play around with alcohol. Oh, hello, Tanya. It would be interesting to compare the latest research of coffee versus the assignment we did on WellPart. Yes, I don't even remember doing an assignment at WellPart. Did we do an assignment on coffee? I've done I have done a lot of reading on coffee and the enzymes involved, and some people metabolize, some people don't. So it's a really interesting rate. It's one of the reasons why you get research that says coffee is fantastic and then coffee is not good for you. It's because everyone's different, and it depends on whether you've got the enzymes to break it down or not. If you haven't got the enzymes to break coffee down, coffee's not going to be good for you, not even one, not even tea, not even cocoa. If you've got the enzymes to break down coffee, then it's going to be far more beneficial. But then it depends on how many enzymes you've got. So I might actually do a whole talk on coffee because I love it. So anyway, so where did I get up to? So that's kind of it. So be careful about the type of carbohydrates you're eating. Be careful of those outside chemicals that can really impact our hormones. Look at coffee and definitely look at alcohol. So particularly if you are having any kind of weird symptoms, perimenopause, menopause symptoms, have a look at alcohol. Reduce it, maybe even just avoid it until menopause is over, and then reassess. Steve has stopped drinking coffee and stopped snoring. Yes, now I get a decent sleep, and he will probably be sleeping better too because of it as well. It's coffee is really interesting. It's one of those things that it's really hard because I love coffee, and I have one a day, and that's my treat, and I just can't have any more. I'd love to, but I can't. So if I was going to give you some tips on what to do to help, then I would say number one is to reduce those liver burdens as much as you can, especially the alcohol. Really, really sorry to say it, but especially the alcohol. If you can reduce it, if you can avoid it, if you're willing to avoid it, there are non-alcoholic versions out there. As I said yesterday, one of my favorite things is the kombucha, which is obviously got alcohol in it, which is why I like it. But it's got such a small amount of alcohol in comparison to me having a gin, that's what I'll have now and again. I really like the kombucha, and I'll have that instead of alcohol. There's a really good company called Chiller NZ, and they do non-alcoholic drinks, and they do some really good spirits, non-alcoholic spirits that are actually really tasty, and their non-alcoholic beers are really good. I'm yet to find a non-alcoholic one that tastes like wine. It's a bit like dandelion coffee. Does not taste like coffee. Sorry, it doesn't. But there's some really good options, and half the time it isn't necessarily the alcohol, it's about the thought. So if I put kombucha in a wine glass and I sit and I treat it as though it's alcohol, I'm getting the same relaxation and joy from it. It's not the alcohol that I was enjoying really, it was actually just the process, the routine, and what it symbolized. So yeah, increasing your fruit and veggies, like I said, 30 plus plants a week, you will get nearly all the vitamins and minerals that you need, which is going to be really important to get those antioxidants. Eating those colours, having colours is really important. Variety, different colours on your plate, that will give you those antioxidants that will support your liver. Eating those sulfur-rich foods, so your broccoli, your cauliflower, your Brussels sprouts, your onions, your garlic, your egg. Zinc-containing foods, pumpkin seeds, seafood, all really important for your liver. Make sure you're eating 25 to 30 grams of protein every meal if possible. You don't want to overload with protein for your dinner. You need to be looking at breakfast and lunch too. If you're eating a really good protein-rich breakfast and lunch, alongside with your plants, you're probably not going to have that slump in the afternoon because you're really hungry. Usually we get that afternoon slump because we just haven't eaten enough protein. Non-alcoholic wines are, yeah, great. We've been working our way through them. Yeah, I have not found a non-alcoholic wine that I think tastes nice. But even I can't put an umbrella in and think that it tastes nice. They all taste like fizzy grape juice. It's not the same. Drinking green tea. So green tea is really good. You can have that instead of coffee. It still has caffeine in it, but it's really rich in antioxidants. Coffee's rich in antioxidants too. But drinking green tea is really great. I do find it quite bitter, but now and again, green tea is great. You can add herbs to the green tea as well. Have a look at herbs. There's some lovely herbs out there. So milk thistle, globe artichoke, dandelion, burdock. You can get really nice dandelion coffees. To me, I have to think of them as being something different. I can't say the word dandelion and coffee in the same sentence because it just doesn't taste like coffee. But there's, I've forgotten what it's called, Kiri Gubble. No, she gave me some and it was like handy dandy, I can't remember. The Dandy Blend, and that's actually really nice. It's not coffee, but it's actually a really nice drink. The potions, forgotten the name of it, Magic Cocoa, something potions. I'll find that. They do some really lovely herbal coffees. And herbal teas where they used, and it's like liver teas and they use dandelion, and you can use it instead of coffee with liver loving herbs. It'll come to me, menopause brain, I can't remember what it's called. So there's lots of versions out there. I absolutely love Artemis herbal teas. There's a really lovely, I've got it with me, I don't have it here, but they do a kidney support tea and a liver support tea, and I absolutely love the liver support tea. If you wanted to really support your detoxification, then you have the liver and the kidney tea around breakfast time, but just get the herbal tea for liver and drink that. And I love that, it's brilliant, and that's got some lovely herbs in it, and it's actually quite nice tasting. So you can have a herbal tea every day to support your liver too. Oh, just have Artemis. Yeah, I love Artemis. I really do. And that's you can get that at health food stores. You can get that at chemists. So that's an easy thing to take. Phytomed, that I know they do liver support fluid extract. Actually doesn't taste too bad. And you can take, I would probably just have like 1 to 2 meals a day of that as a maintenance. You don't need it necessarily. If you're going to go out drinking over Christmas, then you might need the full dose. But if you were just supporting your liver, then 1 to 2 meals a day is probably good enough just to support your liver. So I think that's my only tips. Reduce the liver burdens. Make sure you're eating your 30 plus a week of plants. Including those sulfur-rich foods and zinc-rich foods. If you're eating plants, you're going to be getting that anyway. Nuts and seeds. Make sure you're eating enough protein because your liver needs that. And as you are moving through those stages post-menopause, you definitely need more protein. Try drinking green tea instead of the coffee, and have a play with some herbs, some really beautiful liver herbs out there that will support you and support your liver. So hopefully you found that useful. It's a really important way of just managing the balance out of the hormones. Let me know if you've got any questions. Again, I'm going to put a little tile in so you can let me know what one thing did you learn, what are you going to start doing, keep doing, or stop doing as a result of today. I've got the slides that I'll put in there for you, so you'll have these notes, and I've also got a red juice, that's a beetroot juice, which is actually quite tasty, I have to say, that you can have a play around with, and it's part of our juice reset that we're going to do at the end of November. So have a play with that recipe. And I was going to give you a herbal tea recipe, but actually you can go and buy some really beautiful liver herbal teas in a supermarket. So I thought, well, I'll just stick with that for now. Let's make it easy. I can give you some recipes and do some playing later on. But just to start with, you can easily go and get some really lovely herbal teas. And tomorrow I am going to talk about plant estrogens, where you get them from and do they work. So that's tomorrow. So have a fantastic Tuesday evening. Take care, and I will see you all soon.